Now behind me is a typical older neighborhood, happens to be in Tulsa, but it could be in any town in Oklahoma. As you can see, it has some big street trees remaining, but a lot of them have been removed. Today I want to visit with Grant Ehlan. Grant is Tulsa's urban forester. And Grant, what can a city like Tulsa do to help preserve the urban forest?
Well, the first thing is to get organized, excuse me, as a city and have some kind of a plan. A lot of people have good intentions, but they don't have any plan, and things flounder.
Are they, in cities around Oklahoma, such as Enid or Perry or some of the smaller towns, could they do it through churches or schools and get more trees planted for reforestation?
Yeah, the first thing that really needs to be done, again, is planning. And the smaller the community, it may not be as financially capable to hire a forester like myself. So what can be done is to organize interested people and to form a committee. And that committee can then start organizing groups, churches, whatever, within the community to start planting trees and also develop a maintenance program for the existing trees.
Could a neighborhood, such as a typical one like this, could the neighbors band together and possibly get trees at a discount to help reforest their street?
Yes, that's a very good point. In fact, most people, when they go to the nursery, they're kind of appalled at the price of new trees. But most nurserymen would probably jump at the chance to sell quantity trees. So if a group, a neighborhood, could band together, get everybody's order together, and then go to the nursery, they could probably get a good discount.
Well, what's the situation in Tulsa? Now, you were hired about a year and a half ago as the city's urban forester. What are you trying to do here to correct the problem of losing older trees?
Well, first of all, is to educate people, to realize that trees are very valuable. And as I've said in many other situations, trees are not stray dogs. They don't take care of themselves, especially in the urban environment. Trees have to deal with pollution from the cars and everything else. They also have to deal with confined growing space.
Well, this is very obvious.
Definitely
right here.
Confined.
These were planted close together almost 60 years ago between a street and a sidewalk.
Research has shown that the average life of an urban tree is only 32 years.
My goodness.
So lots of things need to be done to lengthen that time period. Planting the right tree in the right space. These trees shown here, the elms, 3 of them planted in a space that's only big enough for 1 tree. Those are the kind of things to look for. Another thing is utility lines. A lot of people have grand ideas of planting this big oak tree, and they forget to look for the power lines.
Right.
And then after the tree starts growing, it gets whacked because of the power lines. So there are a number of things, and that's why it takes some research. And it doesn't take a lot of time to research. You know, call the OSU Extension or whatever for those kind of information.
Perhaps get a list of trees that would survive in their part of the state. Get some ideas on spacing. I know we try to educate gardeners that that little tree you buy from the nursery is going to be massive someday, so allow for it. With an older tree such as these, what sort of maintenance type things can be done to keep them alive a little longer?
Well, as you might be able to see from the camera on these trees, there's probably some dead wood in those trees. Branches that have died in the past and they're still up there. Those are basically doors for insect and disease into the internal parts of the tree. So they need to be pruned away. And also fertilization is a very key thing. In the woods, you know, people ask me all the time, well, the trees in the woods don't get any kind of care. Well, they're away from the urban environment. Trees in the woods die just like trees in the cities do, except they have the natural surroundings. Trees dying, leaves falling and everything stay in place and decay and provide nutrients. But in town, we like our manicured lawns.
Oh, yes.
So that nutrients is taken away when we haul off the trash.
Well, now, is a lawn competing with a big tree in a yard type situation? Aren't those two in conflict?
Yes, they are. If you've ever had thatch problems with your grass, you realize how thick that root system of the grass is. And that acts as a barrier for nutrients. Somebody might fertilize their lawn. I asked several people, do you fertilize your tree? And they said, well, I fertilize my grass. Well, the majority of that fertilizer only gets to the grass. It doesn't get to the trees. So fertilization needs to be done for trees in the fall and winter when the grass is dormant.
Okay, that makes sense, so that the nutrients would not be competing with
Right.
the grass and trees. So far as watering goes, we think about watering trees in July and August when it's hot, but is that enough water to keep the trees healthy?
Well, as most people realize in Oklahoma, who knows when it's going to rain. So we have wet winters sometimes and we have dry winters sometimes. So the best thing to do is go according to the weather. If we have lots of rain, then you don't need to water so much. But the usual practice of just watering in the summer kind of sometimes leaves your trees dry.
We're seeing examples of that now. I was checking some buds on some Bradford pears earlier today, and although the freeze probably killed them back, they are suffering from the drought last
Right.
summer as well. We're seeing their carryover from that.
Right. One thing that research has shown, the year before, so like last fall, the end of the summer and last fall and the early part of the winter, the tree was storing up energy and the such for this coming spring and summer's growth. So if the tree was lacking nutrients and water during that time period, it's going to affect the way it grows this spring and this summer. So it's very important to fertilize and to water on an ongoing basis.
Well, some of these communities, if you're planning tree planting programs, they really need to build in a maintenance factor to that budget, don't they?
Very much so. One of the biggest things that I run across in Tulsa, everybody's gung-ho about planting trees, but they don't think about what's going to happen to that tree in 2 years after we get through watering.
Sure. They
So-
expect it to just make it on its own then. I guess
Definitely.
that's why they don't live as long as
Exactly.
we expect them
Again, I keep referring to research. It has been shown that the 32 years is an average. And I know most of you probably say, well, I know a tree that's 100 years old just down the street. Most of the times, though, on the whole, trees don't live very long in city because of all the factors they have to contend with. So by maintaining a tree, like we've already mentioned, watering and fertilizing, you can lengthen that lifespan tremendously. And trees are for generations to come. They're not just for right now.
Well, that's why I like to think about these trees right here. Even though they were probably planted too close together back in the 30s, someone planted them thinking of the future, and they're here and enjoyable, but they won't be here forever. We know that trees have a finite lifetime just like people do. Can you name, just quickly, a few tree species that might be of benefit to plant in an urban environment that are perhaps pollution tolerant or tolerant of
Sure.
a little bit of negligence?
Entering into that question, viewing this street, you see that these 3 trees here, and then on down the street there's nothing,
Right.
because this whole community was planted with the same species.
American elm.
Exactly. American elm, or the Siberian elm, is another species in the elm family. One thing to look for when you're planting in other communities is to divide up the species. They recommend not to plant more than 15% of the same tree. So species that are considered, the good thing to do is to go into your site and check the soil conditions. If you have a good well-drained soil, or if you have a clay content soil. And when you go to the nursery, tell them what kind of soils that you have and ask them for guidelines, trees that can grow in this kind of a soil or that kind of a soil. Typical trees that can handle the urban environment, compact soils, clay soils, Chinese pistache. It's a native or a naturalized tree, not a native tree, but it does really well. The favorite ornamentals, the Bradford pear,
Yes.
they do well in clay soils. The oaks, one of the popular nursery oaks is pin oak, but it does not do well at all in clay soil. It requires good bottomland, well-drained soils. An oak tree that can handle clay soils more so would be southern red oak, maybe shoe-marred to some extent of clay, and water oak, the willow oak, things like that. Another very good large oak tree would be a bur oak. It can handle the clay soils.
And it would live a long time and get nice
Right.
and big, get plenty of shade. I know a lot of gardeners want, as you and I talked earlier this morning, they want instant gratification.
Exactly.
They want trees that are going to grow fast. But picking out something like a silver maple, you're setting yourself up for trouble by that. It's fast but very weak wooded. I
Definitely so.
understand.
Something that you'd mentioned people tend to want instant gratification. They want to plant a tree that will grow fast. Well, with proper maintenance, again, watering and fertilization, your trees can grow fast. I've seen personally a 10-year-old pin oak planted in good soil and taken care of that is now 30 feet tall, and it's only 10 years old.
That's wonderful.
So it doesn't necessarily mean because I buy an oak tree that it's going to be 30 years before it's as tall as my house.
Yes.
It depends on how well you take care of that thing.
Well, those are a few really good tips to get gardeners started in your own community with retreeing the community. In Tulsa, we're trying to make some effort. I challenge you to go out to your hometown and take a look at it. Take a look at some of those older trees. Think about taking better care of the trees that you have and replanting for the future generations to come. Grant, thank you. This has been really interesting.
Pleasure.
And we have some more gardening to do today.